Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive. Today we're tackling anxiety. You know that feeling, right?
Yeah.
The worry that just kind of eats at you and keeps you up all night.
Yeah, those what ifs.
Exactly, the what ifs.
Yeah.
So we're going to dig into some really powerful teachings from Michael Leadon and his Unchained Disciples ministry. It's a bi-weekly Bible study group.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and they've got this unique approach to dealing with anxiety, blending biblical teachings with really practical techniques. So if you're ready to ditch the worry and discover how getting closer to Jesus can actually help you find peace, well, you're in for a treat.
I think what's so refreshing about Michael Leadon is he doesn't pretend anxiety doesn't exist.
Yeah.
He actually shares this story about a man who thought worry was the answer.
Like worry was a good thing.
Yeah, he actually said worry works because nothing he's stressed about ever happened.
Wow. So he believed worry somehow prevented bad things.
Exactly. Like it was some kind of magic shield. But then Michael Leadon brings in this research from Dale Carnegie's book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And Carnegie found that only a tiny 8% of the things we worry about are actually things we can control.
That's crazy. Think about that for a second. How much of our worry is actually productive?
Right. It's like we're wasting all this energy on stuff we can't even change.
And that's where Michael Leadon makes this really important distinction between stress and anxiety. I think it's kind of blurred sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. People use those words interchangeably, but they're not quite the same.
So how would you break that down?
Well, stress is that immediate reaction we have to something specific, like
Nice.
right before a big presentation.
Oh yeah, your heart's pounding.
Exactly. You're sweating. It's tied to that event.
Well-
And usually it fades once the event is over.
Okay, so it's temporary.
Right. Anxiety, on the other hand, is more of a general feeling of worry or unease. It can pop up even when things seem okay, and it can linger for a long time.
So like that feeling you get when you think you lost your phone, even though it's probably right there in your pocket.
Yeah, that constant checking even when you logically know you have it.
Exactly. That nagging worry that just won't quit. But Michael Leadon also makes this interesting point that anxiety isn't always a bad thing. He actually says it can be a signal.
Like a warning.
Yeah, that something's important to us.
That's a cool way to look at it, like our internal compass trying to guide us.
Exactly. But then the question becomes, how do we know when it's crossed the line? When is anxiety actually a problem that needs to be addressed?
That's a great question. And Michael Leadon tackles that head on. He says there are actually 5 main types of anxiety disorders, and recognizing these can be really helpful.
Okay, so let's dive into those. What are the 5 types?
Well, the first one is generalized anxiety disorder, or AD. And this is when you're constantly worrying about a bunch of different things.
So it's not just one specific worry. It's more like a general sense of dread.
Exactly. Like you're always on edge waiting for something bad to happen.
Okay, and what about the other types?
Well, there's panic disorder, which involves these sudden, really intense episodes of fear.
Those are the panic attacks, right?
Yeah, and they can be terrifying. Your heart races, you sweat, you might feel dizzy. Some people even feel like they're dying.
Sounds awful.
It can be, but the good news is panic attacks are treatable. People can learn to manage them.
That's good to know. What about the other types?
We also have obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD. This one's characterized by recurring thoughts or obsessions that trigger anxiety. And then people feel compelled to perform these repetitive behaviors or compulsions to try and ease the anxiety.
It's like someone who has to wash their hands over and over again.
Exactly. Or someone who can't stop checking the locks. Their mind gets stuck in a loop.
Okay, and what about the last 2?
Well, there's post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, which can develop after someone experiences or witnesses a traumatic event. It can manifest in flashbacks, nightmares, and intense anxiety.
That could be really debilitating, especially for people who experience trauma, like veterans or survivors of abuse.
Absolutely. And then finally, we have social anxiety disorder, which involves a really intense fear of social situations.
So like being afraid of public speaking or even just going to a party.
Exactly. People with social anxiety worry about being judged or embarrassed in front of others. They might even avoid social situations altogether.
It's important to remember that none of these disorders are a sign of weakness. They're real conditions that can be effectively managed with professional help.
Absolutely. Michael Leadon is very clear about that. He encourages people to seek help if they're struggling. He says it's a sign of strength to reach out.
Okay, so we've covered the different types of anxiety disorders, but how do we know if we're actually experiencing one of these? What are some of the symptoms we should be on the lookout for?
Michael Leadon breaks it down into physical, emotional, and even cognitive symptoms.
It can affect all those areas.
It really can. Physically, you might experience a racing heart trouble sleeping, muscle tension, headaches, even digestive issues.
It's amazing how anxiety can manifest in our bodies.
It's wild, right? And then there are the emotional and cognitive symptoms, feeling constantly on edge, difficulty concentrating, excessive worry, negative thoughts, or self-doubt.
So anxiety can affect how we think, feel,
Yeah.
and even how our bodies function.
Exactly. It's a whole body experience.
Yeah.
And Michael Leadon points out that sometimes anxiety can be sneaky, especially with what's called high-functioning anxiety.
What's that?
It's when people seem successful and put together on the outside.
But they're struggling inside.
Exactly. They're masters at masking their anxiety,
Right.
but it's still taking a toll.
So it's crucial to pay attention to what's going on inside, even if everything looks okay on the surface.
Absolutely. Now that we've explored the different types of anxiety and some common symptoms, let's dig into what Michael Leadon has to say about the root causes of anxiety. Where does this anxiety monster even come from?
Yeah, I'm really curious about that. Let's unpack those root causes.
Michael Leadon really dives deep into those root causes, and one of the things he points to is our modern obsession with being busy.
It's like we're all caught up in this hustle mentality. You know, always striving for more.
Exactly. And Leadon suggests that all this busyness can actually be a way to avoid dealing with deeper issues.
So we're basically distracting ourselves from things we don't want to face.
Exactly. It's like we're running from our own feelings. And it's not just about filling our schedules. Leadon also talks about how unconscious emotional associations can play a role.
Unconscious associations.
Yeah, like he gives this example of a man who always felt uneasy around doctors.
Even though he liked his doctor.
Yeah, it turns out the guy had a bad experience as a kid getting his finger pricked by a doctor. And even though he didn't consciously remember the incident, it still created this subconscious anxiety around doctors.
Wow. It's like our bodies remember things our minds have forgotten.
Exactly. And these associations aren't always from negative experiences either. They can even be tied to positive things, like success.
So someone who always excelled in school might now feel anxious about not being the best.
Precisely. They've unconsciously linked their self-worth to their achievements. And any perceived failure triggers that anxiety.
That's really interesting. So what else does Michael Leadon say about these root causes?
Well, he also talks about indecision and how it's often fueled by perfectionism.
Ah, yeah. The need to make the perfect choice.
Exactly. Like even something as simple as ordering at a restaurant, some people agonize over the menu while others just pick something and enjoy the meal.
Oh, I totally get that.
Yeah.
I'm definitely guilty of overthinking things.
Leadon actually encourages us to practice making quicker decisions, especially in low-stakes situations.
So like not spending an hour trying to choose what to watch on Netflix.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that not every choice needs to be perfect. And sometimes it's okay to just go with your gut.
And speaking of letting go, Leadon also talks about the need for control as a major source of anxiety, which makes sense in a world that often feels so chaotic.
Absolutely. We try to control everything we can to feel safe.
But the reality is we can't control everything.
Exactly. And that's where faith comes in. Leadon says true peace comes from surrendering our need for control and trusting in God's plan.
It's a humbling realization, but it's also incredibly freeing.
Absolutely. And Leadon also talks about how fear is a huge driver of anxiety. And not just fear of specific things like spiders, he's talking about deeper fears. Fear of failure, fear of the future, fear of what other people think.
Those fears can really hold us back.
They can. Leadon reminds us that when we let fear control our lives, we limit our potential and create so much unnecessary anxiety. He encourages us to face those fears head on.
So it's about recognizing those fears and then choosing to trust in God instead.
Exactly. So we've talked about the root causes of anxiety, but now I'm curious about the solutions. What are some practical things we can do to actually start taming this anxiety monster?
Yeah, I'm ready to hear about those solutions. Leadon offers a lot of different strategies, right?
He does, from prayer techniques to lifestyle changes to even these quick anxiety-busting tricks.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's start with prayer. What does Leadon have to say about that?
Well, he's a big believer in the power of prayer, not just as a spiritual practice, but as a tool for actually transforming our minds and bodies.
I love that. So it's not just about feeling good, it's about
Really?
actual change.
Exactly. And Leadon even points to scientific research to back this up. He talks about the work of Dr. Caroline Leaf, a neuroscientist who's done a ton of research on the impact of our thoughts and beliefs on our brains.
So our thoughts can actually change our brains.
That's what Dr. Leaf found. And get this, she found that just 12 minutes of focused prayer every day for 8 weeks led to measurable changes in brain scans.
Wow. So prayer can literally rewire our brains.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's like we're training our brains to be more peaceful and less reactive to stress. And Leadon emphasizes that prayer isn't just about asking God for things. It's about connecting with a higher power, aligning ourselves with God's will, and surrendering our anxieties to Him.
So it's about letting go of that need to control everything.
Exactly. It's about saying, God, I trust you. I'm not in this alone. And when we come to prayer from that place of surrender, it can have a really powerful impact on our well-being.
That makes sense. But what about those times when we need more immediate relief from anxiety? Like, what are some of those quick anxiety-busting tricks Leadon talks about?
Well, one of them is surprisingly simple: chewing gum.
Chewing gum. Seriously.
I know it sounds kind of funny, but studies have actually shown that chewing gum can help reduce stress and anxiety.
Hmm. Got to try that. What else does he recommend?
Another one is simply counting backward from 100. It forces your mind to focus on something other than those anxious thoughts.
So it's like hitting the reset button on your brain.
Exactly. And it's a discreet way to manage anxiety in the moment. You can do it anywhere.
Like that. What are some other quick techniques?
Leadon also suggests taking a brisk 10-minute walk, looking at something green for about 40 seconds, or even splashing cold water on your face.
Those are all really simple things, but I can see how they could help shift your focus.
Exactly. Sometimes just changing your physical environment or sensation can be enough to break out of that anxious loop.
Okay, so those are some quick fixes. But what about longer-term lifestyle changes? What does Leadon recommend for building resilience against anxiety?
He starts with the basics, emphasizing the importance of regular exercise.
Yeah, exercise is always good.
It is. It releases endorphins, those feel-good chemicals in our brains, which can help reduce stress and boost our mood.
I know I always feel better after a good workout.
Right, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Even a 20-minute walk each day can make a difference.
Okay, that's doable.
What else?
Leadon also stresses the importance of prioritizing rest, aiming for 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep each night.
Yeah, that can be tough sometimes, especially when anxiety is keeping you up.
I know. But sleep deprivation makes us so much more vulnerable to stress and anxiety. It's a vicious cycle.
So getting enough sleep is essential for building that emotional resilience. Absolutely. Leadon also highlights the power of nature. He recommends spending at least 20 minutes a day walking in nature, whether it's a park, a forest, or even just your backyard.
There's definitely something calming about being in nature.
There is
Yeah.
Research has shown that being in nature actually reduces activity in the parts of our brains that are associated with anxiety and depression.
Wow, that's amazing. So nature can literally calm our minds.
It's like a natural reset button. What else? Oh, Leadon also talks about nurturing our social connections. Spending quality time with loved ones, whether it's friends, family, or even pets, can release oxytocin, a hormone that reduces stress and promotes feelings of well-being.
So it's not just about being around people, it's about feeling connected and supported.
Exactly. It's about having people in our lives who make us feel loved and understood.
I love that.
Yeah.
And finally, Leadon talks about breath work, right?
He does. He teaches this technique called box breathing, which is actually used by Navy SEALs to help manage stress and anxiety.
Wow, Navy SEALs. Okay, I've got to hear about this. How does it work?
It's pretty simple, actually. You inhale for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and then hold your breath again for 4 seconds.
So it's all about controlling your breath and creating this rhythm.
Exactly. And this controlled breathing pattern can really calm your nervous system and bring a sense of focus and clarity.
I like that. It sounds easy enough to try.
Yeah.
So we've got prayer, we've got lifestyle changes, and we've got these quick anxiety-busting techniques. It feels like Michael Leadon really offers something for everyone.
He does. He gives us a whole toolbox of strategies, and he encourages us to find what works best for us. But beyond these practical tools, Leadon also weaves in this really powerful message about finding peace in the midst of all the chaos and challenges of life.
Yeah, it's not just about managing symptoms. It's about cultivating a deeper sense of peace that can help us navigate whatever life throws our way.
He uses this story about Peter walking on water,
Oh, yeah.
to illustrate this whole idea.
I love that story.
So Peter, he's walking towards Jesus on the water, right? Total faith and confidence. But then he takes his eyes off Jesus and starts focusing on the wind and the waves.
And he starts to sink.
Exactly. He lets fear take over. And Leadon says that's what we do too. When we lose sight of our faith and we focus on all those what ifs, we start to sink under the weight of our anxieties.
It's like we forget that Jesus is right there with us, ready to help.
Exactly. Even when we feel like we're drowning, we can always cry out to Jesus. He's always there ready to pull us back up.
It's such a powerful reminder that we're not alone in this.
And just like Peter needed to keep his eyes fixed on Jesus to stay afloat, we need to keep our focus on God to find that true peace and stability. We need to trust that even when we can't see the path, He's guiding us every step of the way.
It's about shifting our perspective from fear and worry to faith and trust. It's not just about avoiding anxiety. It's about strengthening our faith so we can handle it better.
Exactly. And Leydon also talks about how gratitude can be a powerful antidote to anxiety. Yeah. He says even when things are tough, we need to focus on the good things in our lives. Big or small, doesn't matter.
So it's about intentionally shifting our focus to what's positive.
Exactly. It's about training our minds to look for the good even in the midst of
I
challenges.
like that.
Yeah.
Because it's not about denying our anxieties. It's about choosing to focus on what's good and true, even when those anxieties are swirling around.
Exactly. And Leadon emphasizes that this isn't a one-time fix. It's an ongoing journey of seeking, growing, and trusting in God's plan.
It's about building that resilience
Yeah,
so we can handle whatever comes our way.
exactly. He reminds us that anxiety doesn't define us. We have the power with God's help to reclaim our peace and live a life filled with joy and purpose.
That's so encouraging. It's a reminder that we're not victims of our circumstances or our emotions. We have a choice in how we respond. And with God's help, we can find peace and freedom even in the midst of anxiety.
And Michael Leadon leaves us with this challenge to think about what really resonated with us today, and then identify just one small step we can take to start moving towards a more peaceful and grounded version of ourselves.
I love that.
Mm,
It's not about trying to change everything overnight. It's about those small, consistent steps.
exactly. So what resonated most with you? Was it the power of prayer, the importance of sleep, spending time in nature? Whatever it is, take that one small step and see what a difference it makes.
Because you're not alone in this journey. There's hope, there's help, and there's a path towards a life that's not ruled by anxiety, but filled with peace, joy, and purpose. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into taming the anxiety monster. We covered a lot today, from understanding the different types of anxiety to exploring its root causes. And most importantly, we learned about practical strategies and spiritual insights from Michael Leadon and his Unchained Disciples ministry to help us find freedom from anxiety. Remember, anxiety doesn't have to have the last word. You have the power with God's help to reclaim your peace and live a life full of joy and purpose. Keep seeking, keep growing, and keep trusting in the one who holds you in the palm of his hand.